But here's what's great. If you're listening and you're going through setbacks and stuff and you have children, you got to look at it as our job is to raise the next batch of good adults. People say, oh, I want to raise a good kid. I don't want to raise a good kid. I want to raise a great adult.
Hello, and welcome to the Rise Again podcast. My name is Dr. Peter Risenen, and I'm your host here at the Rise Again podcast. Now, we're on to season 2, and the thing about season 2 that's going to differentiate it from season 1 are the things that I've gone through in my life since we were doing season 1. We have recently fostered and adopted a newborn. I killed my first bull elk with my bow and arrow last fall, and I've gotten into fly fishing, as well as am now the medical director of a men's health and testosterone replacement business. This has all been majorly life-changing for me, and I'm super excited to share some of the journey with you guys through the Rise Again podcast. So I hope you guys get something out of this. If you guys love it, please rate it and review it, share it with your friends. Let's get the stuff out there. We're going to share some amazing guests, and I hope you guys really enjoy season 2 of the Rise Again podcast. Hey, welcome back, everybody, to the Rise Again podcast. Today, I have my good friend, JP Penzokover, on the podcast. JP has a podcast called The Fit Archer, and he is an incredible guy with a good story from where he came from and what he's up to today. We talk a lot about values. We talk about fitness, so mental, emotional, spiritual, all the different realms of fitness, and where are values and priorities. We talk a little bit about hunting. We talk about his past history in the financial space, and currently in the financial space, as well as his past history in a multi-level marketing business where he was crushing it financially, right? But we learn from everything, and to everything there is a season. And so we talk a lot about all these really cool things in JP's life. So I hope you guys really enjoy today's episode with JP Penzkover. The season 2 of this podcast is really going to be on the new things that have changed in my life too, right? I got into hunting, which was a totally new thing for me.
And you whacked a big elk.
Yeah, that was what a blast. And you just happened to be there at elk camp when we came back with the head and, all that. That was just...
Taps is like, you got to meet my buddy. He just killed this big 6x6. It was so dark, but I could still see your smile the whole time around the fire. You were so happy.
Oh, yeah. My teeth were just gleaming.
Oh,
yeah.
man, it was amazing.
Taps was like, you're just whistling Dixie. I was like, I am.
Yeah.
You know what? Absolutely.
And I tell you what, we chased bulls in that same area you killed yours, and it was a track meet. Every time we'd hear him bugle, they'd bugle, and my buddy would be like, well, here goes a track meet. Because last elk hunting season was so weird because the bulls, and you know how they were bugling in there, they were just off the charts. Mm-hmm. The minute they would start bugling, they'd round all their cows up. And I think there was so much competition, they just took off running and they would never see us. And we're running alongside trying to cut the herd off. 3 nights in a row, we could never catch them. And we'd get down to that road and then they'd cross the road and we would sprint across that road and try to get ahead of them. You can't catch elk.
No.
But it was so funny because I think it was like this 3rd night. All of a sudden we heard this big bugle up in there. My buddy goes, here goes the track meet. Are you ready to run? I'm like, yeah, but which direction? Are they going left tonight? Are they going right tonight? So we'd wait till we hear them. And they're like, they're going right. We would just book and run and run. I mean, thank God to be in a little bit of good shape. Because he was sucking wind behind me, but man,
totally, yeah.
we had a blast. It was really good. So we never caught him into where you did, but we chased him like crazy.
Yeah, we were in a spot where I'd go back on a day. I had a buddy of mine who'd hunted the area for like 16 years just for deer. He was kind of like, hey, I know the elk are in there. And so anyways, we kind of just planted up on that hillside. And it was kind of one where we just wanted to cut them off because we knew they went from like a low meadow up this mountain and they would bed on that north facing slope of that mountain. We call it Buck Mountain. We knew that they were moving that direction. So it was kind of like, hey, we know where they go. They just change their routes a little bit each day, but they're not that different. On the day I actually killed my elk, we pulled up, it was 4:45, but it had been a full moon. So the elk had already moved. And so we were like, well, they crossed the road at first light and they go up that mountain. And so we get there and they had already crossed the road an hour earlier than we thought. And they were just slowly making their way up the mountain. And it was just one where we were behind. It was the whole thing. Like if you're behind elk, like you're losing, you know what I mean? Because they're moving so fast.
Right.
They just ended up mingling so much and just kind of hanging out and not moving so fast because they had crossed so early in the morning. And so then, man, there's like 4 bulls bugling up this hillside. And so then we ended up just running up and over the hillside. Well, we ended up seeing a hunter down there calling. We're like, oh, well, he's going to push him because calling hasn't worked at all on this hunt. Like you said, there's so much pressure.
Right. I'm glad you said that because we couldn't call a bull in hardly.
No. couldn't call anything in, and they wouldn't respond. And in fact, they'd go the other direction.
Yeah.
So we heard him calling, and we're like, okay, let's run this direction because he's going to push them all this way because he's calling. Let's let him do the scaring, and we'll run around. And we run west from east to west, and there's these 4 bulls bugling on the hillside, and we stop after I scared one bull and a herd away on the far west side. And then there's these 3 still, and then we hear some locking antlers, and I'm like, oh my goodness, there's like a little battle going on up there. We just wait, and buddy I was hunting with, he was like, let's go up there. So we kind of make our way up slowly, and just above this, on the next shelf up, there's a hillside and then there's a shelf, and then we hear this bull bugle over us, and I was like, oh, I can't see him, but he's close. I saw a dead tree, and then I saw some tines moving in the tree, and then he just started making his way.
Heart rate's going like this. Getting
faster. And I'm like, oh my goodness, he's making his way down the hill. And my buddy, we got to get up there. I was like, no, he doesn't even know we're here. He's working his way right towards us right now. He's probably about 150 out. Anyways, I draw back at him, frontal shot at 65. No, I'm like, I'm not doing it. He's like, man, it's just too dicey.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, it's true. I've missed at 60 yards on this hunt. So let's just let it down. And then he came in, and at 30 yards, I stepped out from behind the tree at full draw, and he was 23 yards away, and just through both his lungs. He didn't know I was there. He turned around. He didn't run. He stood there for a while, like trying to catch his breath, right? Double lung collapse or whatever, right?
Yep.
Starts working his way up the hill, walking a little bit, and then he just laid down, and it was a very emotional experience. I've never experienced something so emotional, really.
Yeah. Well, you shooting such a majestic, I'm looking at your picture there on the wall, but beautiful animal. And I mean, the emotion of it, chasing them and the bugling and getting close, missing, getting close and spooking them. And then when it all comes together, when people, talk about hunting all the time and they're like, well, what is it about that? How can you sit in a tree stand? I grew up in Wisconsin, so you're tree stand hunting. How can you sit in a tree stand for 2-3 hours a night? Because you're looking for that euphoria of a good shot. Nothing better than a good, clean placed kill, good, clean shot, in a quick kill, and they die. I mean, you can't explain that to anybody. You always hear Ted Nugent always say, I'm high on killing animals. I'm high on life. Well, when you're a bow hunter, and I don't want to overemphasize the killing, it's not malicious. It's an art, it's a craft, it's a passion, it's all that kind of stuff. And when it happens, I've cried many times on animals. I mean, I could tell you stories of just bawling, like so emotionally overcome. And you're thinking, what? Somebody out on the outside looking like, what? When you watch the hunting videos and they're like, that's fake emotion. I'm like, that's real emotion. You watch a video, I'm like, that's real emotion right there. They're shaking. They can't control it. Yeah. I wish I'd been there to watch that.
Oh, yeah. It would have been great to have
I
you
did
there.
get to celebrate. It was your birthday too.
Birthday was the next day, so we did celebrate it that night. It was kind of surreal how it all came together.
Yeah.
And then you and Parker.
Hunter
Yep. Being there.
Hunter Parks.
Parks. That's right. I knew Park was in there somewhere. Yep. So yeah, Hunter Parks being there too. That was just really fun. And you have a podcast I was turned on to, The Fit Archer. You've got a cool story of your own, kind of where you came from. I know you're a Wisconsin boy. Take us back to what you're about with the podcast and kind of how that came to be.
I love talking hunting. Matter of fact, I'll tell you a funny story. I'll tell you a lot of funny stories, but this morning I had an 8 a.m. appointment with one of our baseball coaches that I know. He's an outdoorsman, and he was looking at my landscape because we're going to redo some landscape. And I also had an 8:30 appointment that I was wedging in before I drive over here to come do the podcast with you. And so I told my wife, I'm like, hey, you got to be ready. So at 8:20, if I'm not done with the landscape guy, you got to come out and take over because I got to go in and do a work Zoom. And she comes out at like 8:15. She goes, I walked out. You guys haven't even left the front step yet. I knew you're either talking about baseball or hunting. And I'm like, we already talked about hunting. Now we're on baseball. And so I can talk hunting all the time. I love it. And that was really it. I have good connections in the hunting industry just because I've been part of it a long time. My only turnoff with the hunting industry is where social media has taken it a little bit. It seems like there's an element of if you're not the baddest mofo on the planet, then you're nothing. And the whole influencer game is a little bit different. And I'm not negative towards it. It's just, it's different than what I'm used to. Yeah, I'm seeing people be mega influencers in the hunting industry that have been hunting 3-4 years. And some it's because of sexuality and some other things. And I wish the hunting industry wasn't that way, but it is. And, I just don't have to be part of it. So I've had to step back a little bit and think about my podcast. Do I want to continue to be in that? I don't ever want to be seen as that. Mm-hmm. Like the Fit Archer came from, and I'm wearing the shirt, the Fit Archer Challenge. It was, I'd always trained the way I'm going to hunt. I've always done that. Now, I don't want to say always. When I was young, I grew up in Wisconsin, so I was tree stand hunting out of it with a bow. We did some rifle hunting too. So there's no training for that. You just sit in a tree stand. You don't have to be in shape or anything. You can be fat if you want to, which I don't recommend that. I recommend being in shape anyway. But when we started going out west, when I was probably 18, we go out west every year and hunt. And I remember running up a hill in Colorado. I looked up at the top, and it was me, my brother, my uncle, my dad. And I'm like, I'm going to sprint to the top of that hill. Let's get up there fast. And I took off running. It was probably 30 yards maybe. And I got to the top, Peter, and I thought I was dying. I'm like, boom, that's my heart. That was my heart. And I'm like, I forgot about elevation. I mean, my legs were full of lactic acid. My lungs were full. I'm like, I think I'm actually dying. Like, that was the stupidest thing I've ever done. And it made me think, like, what if there was an elk up here bugling and I had to get up to the top in a hurry? There's no way in the world I could shoot right now. I couldn't draw my bow. I couldn't hold it. So my brother and I decided, like, hey, we're going to start heavy backpacking in Wisconsin before we come out on hunts, and we're going to run. And so I'd do some sprints and then I'd shoot. I'd do push-ups and I would shoot. I'd do burpees and I would shoot. I wanted to simulate an elevated heart rate before I would shoot. So a CrossFit buddy of mine who owns CrossFit Blade here in Phoenix, and one really, really good friend of mine, I said, hey, could we use your CrossFit place as an indoor competition? It's Phoenix and it's always super hot. I had done the train to hunt. I competed in that. I won my age division and I thought it was awesome, and that was outdoors. And I'm like, I want to do it indoors where we don't have to be outside in the heat and have to run that far. Like, I hate running, so let's not run that far. So we started what we called the Fit Archer competition. And I'd love to keep it going, but now I've actually changed my mind. I'm like, I would like to have an outdoor one. I would like to do an outdoor one. Indoors is great, but you're limited what you could do. So that's where the Fit Archer came from.
Okay.
We're just thinking, like, hey, what are we trying to do? We're trying to create fit archers. I don't ever claim to be the fit archer. I always say that and make that clear. Like, I like to be in shape, but I'm not the fit archer. There's some that are way fitter than I am, and there's better archers than I am. Okay. So it's just the name of the podcast. So I spun it into a podcast, and I thought, well, I'll just interview people. And it's been good. I've had some great interviews. I enjoy doing it. Again, I'm just toying with the idea, like we just talked about a little bit. I'd like to bring on a guest.
A co-host.
Or a co-host. So I don't always have to have a guest, and we can still have good content, talk about things in archery. And I would also like to maybe spin off a little bit. I kind of pigeonholed myself a little bit just with fitness and archery. I love so much more. I love personal development. I love Christianity. I love Jesus. He's my savior, and I can't do anything without him. I'll just be honest with you. I'm a mess without him. I'd love to talk more about that. I think we're in a place in history and time where people need Jesus.
People need to hear about it more than ever.
More than ever. I mean, there's so much uncertainty. When you listen to other podcasts and you hear people that are worried about the war in Ukraine and what that could spin off to, and you got COVID and you got lack of finances, you got unemployment, inflation, people are just worried. My hope is not in this side of it.
Not of this world.
Not of this world. I'm living in this world, but I don't want to be of this world, right? And so I want to share that with other people. And so I'm in a little bit of a desert with the podcast to figure out which way we're going to take it. So fitness to me isn't just how many push-ups can I do or how far can I run. It's being all around fit, spiritually fit, emotionally fit, financially fit, physically fit. That's fitness to me, because if you just drew a circle and you put fitness in the center and you drew like 5 spokes out, and if you just envision this in your mind's eye, and one of them was spiritually fit, and it goes out to a 8-inch circumference. So each line that comes off a spoke is 8 inches. If it's perfect, if I'm really ringing true, I'm spiritually fit, it's gonna be a perfect circle all the way from spiritual, emotional, financial, physical. I'm gonna have family fitness. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna have a perfect circle where that wheel can run well. Well, if emotionally and spiritually I'm unfit, I got a flat spot in my tire.
That's right.
My life is going to be like running on a tire that's got only 3/4 round and the other part flat. So when people wonder, why are they stumbling in life? We can still stumble having all that fitness together. Mm-hmm. That's why I need Jesus. But if that circle is complete, their life is going to run more in harmony. And there's going to be more joy, more peace, more love, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control, all the fruits of the Spirit.
When you think about fitness too, we're talking about like, well, what's the definition in my mind is like the ability to be able to withstand stresses. It's essentially kind of like resilience. Like, what's your ability to be able to withstand the things that are going to happen to you, right? And if you're not able to do that, like if you don't have mental fitness or you don't have spiritual fitness, or I've seen a lot of people who are, if you don't have God and Christ as the center, right, of kind of your life, and they're not a part of it, of course, everything in this world is just it's going to shake you like a leaf because you're so worried about this world is everything to you. That's a natural reaction to a lot of people. And I've heard a lot of people being really worried right now, especially like you said, with COVID and how everything's going to go economically. It's like, well, we don't have to be so worried about all that.
we pray so hard for joy and all that stuff here. And my wife and I talked about this the other day. We got some stuff going on, and not in our family, but in our lives with a friend. It's tough, illness and stuff like that. And we're praying hard, for our friend and for miracles and all that kind of stuff. And I said to my wife, I'm like, we're praying so hard to keep him here. When we meet Jesus, we're going to wonder why we prayed so hard to stay here. I just think we were going to look back and say, why did I fight so hard to stay in this world? Mm-hmm. And when I could be in his arms in paradise, no tears, no pain, no briars, no mosquitoes, no wasps.
Right.
I had a friend of mine make it a little more joyful now and get away from the doom and gloom. I had a friend of mine that I did a Bible study with years and years ago back in Wisconsin. He always said, he goes, it was because of man's fall that we got briars when we're out there hunting, sticking to our legs and ripping our camo apart, right? He goes, in heaven, there ain't going to be no briars, there ain't going to be no mosquitoes. And I'm like, oh, let's go there.
Let's go. Yeah. Praying for trials too. I mean, I think that's an important part of life. I mean, it strengthens our faith, right? Because it allows us to go back to what matters most to us. So we wouldn't be growing if life was all roses and
we don't grow on the mountaintops. We grow in the valleys.
That's right.
That's the truth, man. From a spiritual standpoint, from a Jesus standpoint, my life was a mess for 26 years. I chased the world. I chased selfish indulgence and everything that I wanted. Wouldn't mind breaking rules, breaking laws, doing everything that satisfied my flesh. And I was very not a good person. And the Lord brought me to my knees. Thankfully, nobody was seriously hurt in any of those endeavors, but he brought me to my knees and I found the truth. I found Jesus. And man, I tell you what a difference my life has been. It's hard to explain to people that don't know that truth because my mom was trying to explain it to me before I knew him. And I'm like, Mom, you're just weird. Like my brother and I'd always be like, oh, here Mom goes on her prayer. She's praying for us. And it's a 40-minute prayer. It's going to be, and we're just trying to eat our lunch with her. She says, let me bless you the food. And she'd pray forever. And we're like, oh, we're eating, going, yeah, whatever, Mom, But then all of a sudden, when I had that personal experience, that interaction with Jesus changed my life.
What was that interaction like? Tell me about the fall, if you will.
I grew up in a small town where drinking was what you do. It amazes me as I look back on it. I think the first time I had alcohol I was probably 12, but going into my freshman year, we started drinking and I was probably intoxicated every weekend other than wrestling. So I played football, wrestling, and baseball. Other than wrestling, because I had to make weight, we drank every weekend. I mean, and just
like substantial amounts
till you were drunk. And it just progressed. And I'm a doer all the way kind of guy. I'm the first to the party, last to leave. My wife always says, no after bars tonight. No, there's JP staying on the pool table. After bar over here. So I was the life of the crowd. And it spiraled downhill. Relationship with my wife, who wasn't my wife at the time, but that wrecked.
So you met her in high school?
Yeah, we went to high school together. She was 1 year older, but we never dated. We didn't date till after high school, but we've known each other very well the whole time. And I never thought of her as like a girlfriend wise. She dated one of my friends all through high school. So we were always together. I had a girl that I dated all through high school and she had a guy she dated all through high school. Well, they had, split up and, we were all living the same stupid life. And so nothing was going to work for anybody. No relationships were going to work out. And she came back to our hometown from where she was living out in Colorado. And I saw her and I'm like, hey, I know you're in town. And hey, well, I was living in a different town now, but I'd come back to my hometown every weekend, play softball and do stupid stuff. I was a hero on the softball field. So that's where you got to go because you can hit home runs in softball.
I see.
I told her, I said, hey, I'm back here every weekend. We can hang out. Never thinking anything of it. And the second weekend, I was driving back home and I told my friend I was with, I'm like, I think I like her. He goes, what, Angie? And I'm like, yeah. And so we started dating and then we were still all partying and it just fell apart.
What was the falling apart like?
It was really hard, but it was something that I was used to because I used to drink so much. So hardship was just kind of part of it. My mom had quit drinking and was a born-again Christian. And what was unique about this was my mom is one of those, my mom is amazing. She's going to pray for you wherever you're at. She's a prayer warrior and amazing. Like her love for Jesus and prayer is just, it's unmatched. She goes, you need to quit drinking or nothing's ever going to work in your life. I'm like, yeah, I'll quit. Don't worry about it. I'll go to AA meeting with you because my mom was going to AA. Funny story. So we meet in this little bitty church, in the basement of this little bitty church. And I'm 25 years old. My mom's there and it's all 45, 50-year-olds. I couldn't even see you in the church because the smoke was so thick. They were smoking. Because when it was smoking, it was so big. Yeah. And I remember walking out, my mom goes, so what did you think? I'm like, I'm never going to another meeting. And she goes, why? I'm like, because I will die of lung cancer. But what happened was my mom intervened which was my ex-girlfriend then, who is now my wife, which was with my wife, Angela. And she started talking to Angie. And I think Angie said something, I could be a little bit wrong, but I think my wife said something like, if you want to talk to me to get back with your son, it's just not going to work. And my mom said, I don't want to talk to you about getting back with my son. I don't think that's wise. I want to talk to you about you because this has happened to you multiple times. You keep seeking out the same things. If you don't change who you are, it's going to happen to you again. She's basically talking about drinking and no life with the Lord. About 2-3 months go by, and my wife and I started to talk, or I'm saying wife now, but this is my girlfriend back then.
Yes.
We started to talk a little bit more, and she said to me, she goes, if you ever touch another drop of alcohol, I'm gone out of your life for good, but I think we need to start going to church. And I'm like, okay, because my mom was bugging me to go to church. I'm like, Mom, I can handle this on my own. That's what I kept thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I was the big,
I see.
You need that because you need a crutch. You need Jesus because you need a crutch. I can do this on my own, which I'd failed multiple times. And so my wife and I started going to church. We went to a different church for a little bit, didn't connect. Then we started going to church with my mom. And we got involved with this company at the same time from a business standpoint. And they had Christian ties, so to speak. And I remember going to this big work convention, and John Smoltz, the pitcher for the Atlanta Braves, comes up on stage. He's one of the guest speakers.
Wow.
And he gives a testimony about giving up alcohol when he was young. And I remember there's 8,000 people in this conference, and I felt like he was talking just to me. And I remember something happened because he talked about his relationship with Christ and giving his heart to the Lord and then serving the Lord from then on and what it did for him. And I'm like, something is weird. Something, like I felt something. Like he was just talking to me, but I couldn't put my finger on it. Well, we went back to our hometown then and went to a church service. And this is, I say this without choking up, hopefully. So I'm sitting here. My wife is on my left, which was my girlfriend at the time, my mom, and then my stepdad. And the pastor gives this amazing message. And then at the end, he gives an altar call. And I can't remember exactly what the message was, but I remember we're bowing our heads to pray, and he's praying, if you want eternal life, you want to be forgiven of your sins and live, covered by the blood of Jesus and all the stuff. He said, bow your head and pray this prayer with me. And it was kind of like the sinner's prayer, his version of the sinner's prayer. And I did that. I had no idea what was going on in the pew next to me. And I did that. And I wasn't a person at that time to get up in front of people. And we got done. And he said, if you had said that prayer, would you raise your hand and come to the front, please? And I remember, I'm like, oh my goodness, I said that prayer. I'm going to the front. I was led by the Spirit. And I walked up, and I remember my arm going out, and my wife grabbed my hand. And my stepdad went around the other side. So it was me, my wife, and my stepdad all got saved at the same church service. And then about a month later, we all got baptized. It was me, my cousin, my wife, my stepdad, I think, got baptized. The water was so hot, the heater never turned off. And we had to get in. And I just look at it like my sin was so great. They needed to boil that out of me. But that's kind of how it was. It's been a totally different life for us. Like living for the flesh, I still battle fleshly desires.
As we all do, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's always going to be a battle and a temptation, but Jesus has overcome all of it for me. And I mean, our relationship, we have the most beautiful relationship. Our children are raised differently.
You got 3 beautiful kids.
We do. Yeah. And they're better than we ever were, so God is so good when we lay our own pride down of, I can handle it on my own, because none of us can.
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest battle is, well, I'm a good person. I can do it all on my own. Well, God says our good deeds are as filthy rags.
That's right.
And that offends some people. And I look at it like, now I know the truth of what he's saying is there's nothing I can do to bring myself to the goodness of God.
That's right.
Except Jesus, and so that's kind of our path. And now I'm passionate about sharing that with other people.
I do believe that would be a good thing for you to be able to start adding in on your podcast as well. I think that's an important message, and it's one that people are seeking.
And needing. Yeah, we're closer to the end times than we ever have been.
Yes.
I don't want any of my friends to not experience it because it's real. I think heaven and hell is 100% real, and we'll experience one or the other.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Take me back to also...
Sorry about the tears there.
This is amazing. No, this is exact. I mean, you'd be surprised how many people, it's a very small percentage of people who don't cry when they get in on the podcast.
Yeah.
And because we're being vulnerable about experiences that have changed our lives in a lot of situations, right? Why don't you share a little bit about your career? You know, and where you're at now, but where you came from.
I have a big guilt in my life that I never served in the military. I would tell anybody that's ever served in the military and their family, God bless you. I think I have that guilt because I'm so enamored by military, elite forces and all that stuff. I've read about every book they've ever published, and it's so inspiring. I love reading inspirational books. But graduated high school with probably a C- average. If it wasn't for sports, I wouldn't even have probably finished high school. School is just not my gig, but I love sports. I loved sports. And so when it was coming to an end, high school was coming to an end, my mom's like, well, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I'm going to go play football somewhere. Like football is my favorite sport. And so I went to my football coach. He goes, you're too small. You're just not going to make it. I graduated at 150 pounds.
And what's your height?
5'8", 5'9".
Okay.
So, and I
maybe
wanted
a wide receiver or something like that. Maybe
water guy. I'd have been fine with a water boy, but I was small, and my next year I grew up to 175 pounds and grew another inch, so I could have played at the school that I went to. So wanted to play football. That didn't work. So then I'm like, well, I'm going to play baseball. And I screwed up. If anybody's listening to this, well, people are listening to this, but for those that listen, don't just be a follower, be a leader. Like I was a follower in baseball. We grew up playing baseball, loved it, had a great team. Get to high school, everybody wanted to stop playing and just live for football because football was so big. And so my sophomore and junior year, I didn't even go out for baseball. And my baseball coach begged me every year, come out for baseball. I'm like, I'm going to live for football. And then we didn't. We'd screw around, go drink. Wasted those years. So my senior year, wrestling, I had a great season going. It was a really, really good season. My sectional semifinals, I was dropped and separated my AC joint. I was out. And so I'm like, well, there goes my whole career of sports is done. I can't even play baseball. Well, it came back. I was fine. I was able to play baseball. I had a phenomenal baseball season that year, made the all-star team, had a great season. So I went to my baseball coach. I'm like, I can't play football in college. I'm going to play baseball. And he's like, you can't skip years and then expect to go anywhere. Maybe you can try to walk on, but then it's all politics. And so it was almost like a negative connotation, like that's not going to happen. Well, during the wrestling season, the wrestling coach at the university that my brother was at was talking to me. So I'm like, well, I'll go there and wrestle then. My brother's up there wrestling and he's a good wrestler. So I'll go up there. And so my oldest friend and I, we went there to wrestle. Mm-hmm. I couldn't get into college my first semester, and I'll get to this is going to the business side. You had asked about that when I'm going through the sports stuff, but I couldn't get into regular college because I didn't have chemistry. So I had to take a technical college course. So I just would wrestle with the team a little bit and then just couldn't go to the university. Got in the next spring, the spring season, got a 1.3 GPA. I was on probation. And I loved bow hunting so much. And wrestling wasn't my favorite sport. In high school, you can do it without loving it. But I loved it when I got into it. In college, it's a different game. Even though it was a Division III college, it was kind of like almost a full-time job. So I didn't love that aspect of it because then it meant I had to keep going to school and I just wanted to bow hunt. As crazy as that was. So the second semester, I think maybe at first I got a 1.7, then I digressed to a 1.3 and I got booted out of college.
Okay.
I was playing a lot of softball, and one of the guys that I played softball with was a plumber. And he was 23 years old. He had 40 acres, his own hunting land and a farm. And he goes, why don't you become a plumber? We make really good money. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds good. So nobody would hire me. So year goes by, 2 years go by. I finally get hired onto a program to be a plumber. I'm now a union steam fitter. So I'm doing welding and stuff. And it's a good career. Like really right now it's a trade and it's a really good career.
Yeah.
But I was unsatisfied. Again, it goes back to I didn't have any fulfillment in my life because I didn't have Jesus in my life. So I was always searching for the next thing. What's going to fulfill me? So there was a gentleman in my hometown that owned a septic pumping portable toilet rental business. From the outside, visually, he had everything. He had a 200-acre farm, he had a log cabin, and he had a Dodge Charger, 1970 Dodge Charger.
Amazing, right?
Yeah, or maybe he might have had a Cornet, but it's everything I wanted.
Yeah.
Materialistic-wise. Sure. And so I thought, what if I could do the business that he does? And so I actually contacted him because I'd known him my whole life. And he said, well, hey, I might be retiring in a few years. Why don't you come on board with me? And then I'll eventually sell you my business. Well, so I kept trying that. And then probably 6 months go by and he goes, I'm not going to sell. But my competition just died. His business is up for sale. So I called my dad. I drove back to my hometown. I said, let's go look at the septic pumping business. And so lo and behold, I go to the bank and I borrow $80,000. My dad gives me $5,000 as a down payment. I borrow $80,000 and I'm a business owner. I own a septic pumping portable toilet rental business.
Wow.
I didn't even know what a septic tank was.
Right.
I just thought if I'm
funny.
my own business, sooner or later, I'm going to get a log cabin on my own land and I'll be able to hunt. I've wanted my own land my whole life. I started running that. My wife kept telling me we're together now. And actually, we went through the process that I just explained in that process. A lot of drinking, a lot of turmoil. So I was kind of through that process. And she kept saying, I don't think this is a good move. I don't think this is a good move. You don't want to do that. I don't want you living in our hometown. It's bad news for us because of everything that we did back there.
That's right. Yeah, all your connections there.
Most people just raise a family and live at the bar and the softball field. And that was where the path I was going down. So I'm running the business, and I get introduced to a nutrition company. I love working out. And so I got introduced to some supplements.
So how old were you then?
23, 24, somewhere around there. Got introduced to these supplements. They made the biggest difference in my workouts I've ever had. Loved them. And the guy tells me that he goes, hey, there's a little business involved in these. And I'm like, oh, okay, what do you do? And he's like, well, you sell these products to other people and you build a team. There's a multi-level marketing business outside of the box. Most people look at those outside the box. And I said, I don't care how it's sold. I love the products. My wife got on it. She went from a size 12 to a size 6, lost 35 pounds, changed her life. My mom got on it, lost 40 pounds. I mean, it was changing all our lives. And I'm like, I want to do this. Like, I want to do it on the side. And so I started building it as a little part-time business. And by our second year, I was making more money with that than I was my full-time business.
Incredible.
Yeah. So I ended up selling the septic pumping business. My wife was a paralegal and we're together now. We're serving the Lord. Things are going good. Our business just continued to grow. We did 18 years in that business.
Wow.
Yeah. And
that was a good business.
It was unbelievable.
Obviously treated you well.
Treated us very, very well. I mean, we built that business up to a 7-figure income. It treated us really, really well. We had life on our terms. It allowed us to move to Arizona.
Yes.
Just on a whim. We could live anywhere we wanted to. Finances weren't an issue. We just got to come out here and live. Well, 3 years ago, the company decided to go a different direction.
What do you mean by that?
They decided to get rid of the multi-level marketing aspect of it. And we went from a 7-figure income to 0 overnight.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. At 42 years old.
Yeah. Tell me about your thought. Like, what was going on there?
Let's bring it back to Jesus, because I wasn't scared. I was more mad. I was more mad at what I was watching happen to my friends that I had got involved in the company.
Who this was their living.
This was their living.
Yes.
And we were at a point where, yes, it affected us. I mean, when you live at that income for that many years, and we didn't live at that, we had a 7-figure income for probably 5 years, your lifestyle naturally starts to grow with that. The company was telling us, hey, this is never going away. Matter of fact, we'd earned a trip to Africa. I'm looking at the lion over your head. We'd earned a trip to Africa, got to be 10 feet from wild lions, watch them eat Cape buffalo. I mean, that was with that company. And that was 4 weeks before they made this change. And we're sitting there and we're kind of sensing something's going on. And the president of the company says, you don't have to worry. We're in the best shape we've ever been in. We'll be here for the next 26 years. So in my mind, we had hit a home run. We had put 13 years of the hardest work you could put into it, built it up to a point where at 42 years old, we basically were living retired. I mean, we were still sustaining our business and working with our leaders and all that kind of stuff, but lived basically retired. And we had built a passive income business. So we didn't really expect it to go away. My thought process was, what am I going to do? This hurts watching what this is doing to our friends that were at a point where they weren't like us, where they had made enough to be okay. Mm-hmm. This was sustaining them. And if you take that away, they're hurt. That's what bothered me the most. I'm not bitter towards them anymore because I'm a forgiving person, but our faith kept us grounded. Luckily, I have a beautiful wife and a very smart wife, so she kept us grounded financially. But we made some very, very smart investment decisions. And the way that I invested was probably 12 years ago. I was looking for a place to put money. I'm not a stock market guy. I was looking for a place to put money where I couldn't lose it, but I had access to it. And that's weird. Most people don't understand that. They think 401k, IRA, it's locked up till you're 59 and a half, can't touch it without penalty. Well, there is some policies. There's some products out there that you can do that with. And I had read enough books. I was self-educating myself to figure out this was our shot to break the financial cycle in our families and give the next generation of the Penzkovers more. Make sense?
Makes sense.
And we had a beautiful childhood. Even though there wasn't a lot of money, my parents loved us, taught us manners and hunting and all those kind of things. So I would never change any of it. But I was looking at how could we break the financial cycle in our family? And this was it. So I don't ever want to squander it. So I went on a deep dive educationally to figure out what can I do? And I came across some concepts. And so we employed those concepts. And when that income went away, those concepts allowed us to have access to all of our money and do some really, really unique things with it. This is how good God works. I never thought I'd live in Arizona. Well, 8 years ago when I moved here, I went into this CrossFit gym and I met a guy by the name of Duvall. And he was in financial world, life insurance and financial world. And we had contacts through the AdvoCare world, ironically. He became a little part of this company that I was, this AdvoCare company, the nutrition company for a while. And we became really good friends. And lo and behold, he was in the industry financially where I was employing my money for years. And so I became really, really good friends with him. And he said to me one day, he goes, way before the financial change, he goes, you should be one of my agents. You really understand this. And I'm like, well, I only understand it because this is what I do with my money, ironically. So when the company changed and took away all our income, he was like my first call. Wow. And I told him, I said, I don't want to go back into the nutrition world and build I never built that company because it was multi-level. A lot of people think we only did it to go after the money. I built it because I loved what they stood for. It just had changed over those years and you're so involved in it, you can't change then. So we just kind of stayed with it. And so I told him I'd like to do something. I've been my own boss for 20 some years. I don't know how I'm going to go work for somebody. It's going to be really tough, but I will if I have to. So could I be one of your agents? I understand what you do. I love what you do. I want to teach people how to handle their finances this way because nobody else is teaching them this. It can be a big benefit for him. And so I've been doing it 3 years. He's made me a vice president of the company. It's gone greater than I could ever have imagined. It's just been such
Incredible.
it's been such
Very
a blessing.
rewarding.
Yeah.
Yes.
They say when a setback is really just a setup. And so I wouldn't change what happened over that 18 years because it gave me all of my skills, relationships to do what I do now. I'm in a different arena, but I'm still helping families.
It's a mind reframe. And the mental reframe happened, of course, when you found Christ and that whole transition happened in your life. Being able to see the opportunity or the problems as opportunities, anybody could really, if they really wanted to, could look back at their life and see these problems and then really see the opportunity that was a jumping off point for them at that, if they're in the right mindset, right? But if you're not, you see these setbacks as big setbacks that, people go back and live in these small towns and just play softball and drink, right? I mean, that could have been your future, right? But you're like, it was a total mindset shift for you. That wasn't even an option.
Yeah, it's been pretty incredible. I think it's just understanding that in our lives, things can change. We watch some of our friends get really devastated because, they just didn't have Christ as a solid rock foundation of it's money. We live in America. We live in the greatest country in the world if you want an opportunity to earn income. It really is. If you're willing to work for it. If I was give advice to somebody, be willing to work very, very hard for it, but don't ever be willing to give up what matters most for it.
Yes.
My family. Jesus, number one, my family. But here's what's great. If you're listening and you're going through setbacks and stuff and you have children, you got to look at it as our job is to raise the next batch of good adults. People say, I want to raise a good kid. I don't want to raise a good kid. I want to raise a great adult. That's who's going to change the world is our next adults that we're going to raise. They have to see us. They didn't see us work. I mean, we were at a point when they were growing up, they didn't need to see us work. If we wanted to go fishing, we went fishing. We want to go hunting, we went hunting. If we want to go to baseball, we went to baseball. I coached every sport my kids were in. We were at every single thing there was. They didn't have to see us work because we had done that all before they'd grown up so that when they got to this point, we didn't have to, we could just enjoy it. Well, they got to see us go back to work and go through those hard times. And so teaching your kids resilience and bouncing back when things happen to you, I think is an important element of life. They're not going to go into their adulthood or even in their childhood and not have trials, right? So if they would see me fall apart and just become a disaster and it's never going to work, Eeyore, what am I teaching them?
That's
right. And so we had to teach them like, hey, that's just what happens. Well, am I going to sit around and sulk about it? Or are we going to buckle our chin strap and go back to work? We're just going to transition and go back to work. And so it was seamless.
It's interesting. I remember back at elk camp, we were visiting about something, and it's kind of interesting how your values are front and center. And one of the things that really had come up was that, you know what? Well, I'm not going to spend as much time elk hunting because it's time for me to be with my kids. My kids they're into their sports and they're into the things that they're into. And if I want to be with my kids, it's not out here hunting right now. And I think that brings up seasons of life, but you seemingly your adaptation was very quick. Like you're like, I notice what's going on in my life and I'm not going to go that way because I want to be there for my kids.
Adapt and overcome. FCA, I got to listen to a Navy SEAL speak one time. Of course, you pay attention when Navy SEAls speak, right?
Yeah, they have a command.
I've read every Navy SEAL book that's ever come out.
All right, you're like a military geek, right?
My buddy always says.
What's your favorite one? Tell me one of your favorites.
My favorite one is called Fearless. If you want a life-changing book, Fearless, the Adam Brown story. I bought 40 copies of it and I gave it out. We had one copy that still goes around our gym. I have people come to me and be like, thank you for that book recommendation. It changed my life. There's a Christian piece in it that book will rock your world.
I actually have it on audiobook. I should read it too, because reading is active and you take more from things sometimes when you're actively participating. Real quick tangent on that. We get back to, priorities and stuff. Everyone listens to audiobooks these days because it's convenient, right? You're driving, you can listen and that's beautiful. But at the same time, what are we missing by not sitting down with a book and actually reading? And I think we're missing something. It's a part of our brain we're not really using as much.
I think you're right. I think there's an exercise in reading that strengthens coordination-wise between your eyes and your brain visually, the whatever part of the cortex you're using for that. I think it's the cortex. I'm not sure. Maybe the amygdala. I don't know. I don't know much about the brain, but I know a little bit. I would recommend anybody read that book and then give Peter what you think about it. I'd love to hear some results on it. So that's one of my number ones. Funny how I got on Navy SEAL books. Let me say this part first, real quick. I'm all over the place here.
No, I love it. This is good.
I listened to one and he said, focus FCA. And I've always thought Fellowship of Christian Athletes. So I've always remembered this analogy. FCA was focus, commit, and adapt. And actually, this was not a Navy SEAL. This was an Army, high-level Army Delta Force.
Okay.
Gentleman, we were in South Dakota, listened to him, and he said FCA, and this guy had been shot, he'd been blown up, beautiful family, he's now retired, but he lived a warrior's life. He said in all of our deployments, it was always FCA, focus, commit, and adapt. So no matter what happened, we had to focus, commit to the task, and then adapt to whatever we needed to adapt to. So if plan A was blown up, focus, commit, and adapt to plan B. And I love that because that's life. That's the life that we live. Nothing's promised to us, right? But I was living in West Salem, Wisconsin, so kind of by La Crosse, and Chris Kyle.
Oh, yeah.
Remember the
American Sniper?
Yeah, American Sniper. He was on Fox News, and I listened to him, and I'm like, ooh, I need to buy his book. It was when he had done his interview and was just ready to release his book, American Sniper. And so I had this really awesome guy named Charles Nolte. He's just such an awesome neighbor to have. He was an older guy. He was retired, great family, loved the Lord. And I told him, I said, hey, I just watched Fox News and there was this guy, they call him, got a book coming out called American Sniper named Chris Kyle. He says, you want to read a good book? He goes, read this one. And it was called Warrior Soul. He gave me Warrior Soul to read, and the American Sniper book came in the mail at the same time. And I'm looking at them both. I didn't know the American Sniper story. I only heard a snippet of him on news, and I just like, well, I'm going to buy that book because it sounded pretty cool. So I'm looking at the two. I'm like, I'll read Warrior Soul first, having no clue. Oh, he gave me two books, Warrior Soul and with Marcus Luttrell, Lone Survivor. So I got all three books, and I read Warrior Soul first, then American Sniper, and then Lone Survivor. And then I was blown away. I was so hooked. The most I've ever run in my life was that. I was running, I was swimming. I didn't want to become a SEAL because I know I wouldn't make it. I'd fail the swimming part.
You were just so inspired.
I was so inspired to overcome weakness just by reading those books. Now I have probably 4 rows of Navy SEAL books.
Isn't that amazing?
My buddy Greg is a hardcore Army Delta Ranger guy. He's like, you need to read more Ranger books. I'm like, I'm not biased one or the other. It's just all my recommendations are all SEAL books.
Right.
But priority-wise, it just comes down to a point. I love to hunt. Hunting is therapeutic, but it also can be very selfish. A lot of fights in families over hunting. I don't ever want it to be that way with my wife is an angel. I love her to death. She lets me hunt a lot. But to me, it's more important for me to be sitting on the sideline, watching my kids swing a bat or wrestle or my daughter on her horse than it is for me to be out chasing an elk. And I've told all my kids, I'm like, when you're younger, I'll probably miss some stuff. I'll be out hunting. But when you get to high school and it matters for you, I will not miss one. And so like hunting last year, I changed my whole elk draw up. I didn't normally put in for that unit, but I did because I knew I could draw and it was close enough to come home for Friday Night Football.
That's true.
So I went up, set my camp, came back, watched Friday Night Football, went up Saturday afternoon opening and hunted up till Friday and then went home, watched football and then came back and hunted the second half. And I'm going to continue to do that probably for the next few years. Like I didn't put in for Utah because I know it would interfere with football. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to Nebraska right now, turkey hunting because it would interfere with baseball. And my buddy's back there going, come on. I'm like, sorry, man. It's so important to me to be there. I think my older son could potentially have a career out past high school. If he wants to go play college ball, he'll be able to play somewhere. But if he chooses not to, the high school days are glorious.
They're priceless.
They are. I don't ever want them to think like, did dad really care? Did he not care? You know, I want them to know like, man, he cared. He cared enough to give up things he loved to do it. So
do you feel like your childhood influenced you in that way? Wanting to be there to care for your kids with their sports?
Yeah, we had unbelievable support growing up. My dad took us everywhere. I mean, from wrestling, we were in an old station wagon and he had 3 or 4 neighborhood boys. Their parents didn't go, it was my dad.
Wow.
Sitting down with milk and after weigh-ins, it was Fruity Pebbles and milk, you know, and to just think of those memories. My dad never missed a sporting event. Never. My brother was a very successful wrestler. He was a 3-time All-American, won nationals 1 year in college as a national champion. My dad went out to I couldn't get off of work to go. Killed me. You know, so maybe some of that still sits in. Like, I don't ever want that to be, I'm going to have my own schedule always where I'm never dictated whether I get to go to something that to us, it means something, but I don't know what it means I don't know what it would have meant to my brother to look over and, you know, see me sitting there. Probably would have meant the world to him. Now I can only relive his national champions through a picture that we have. I would have rather have lived that. So I don't want that to be the case, you know, with my kids.
You don't want to miss out again.
No, not at all. You get me all emotional, Peter.
Yeah,
good.
Man. Yeah.
When I talk about my kids, I get really emotional. But time is going so fast. A good mentor of mine said, he goes, when they get to high school, it'll go by in the snap of a finger. And my son is a sophomore, finishing up his sophomore year right now. And we're in baseball season and in 2 more years will go by like that.
It's going to be gone.
And then it'll be gone.
And you're going to have great memories. He is going to have great memories. And the time with dad, I mean, you know, we've got this little, you know, even bringing it back in our life. Like we got this little boy that we got when he was 2 weeks old, and we've fostered him till he was like 10 months or 9.5 months or so. And then we adopted him. And spending, you know, I've been really blessed and lucky with this new job that I have and this career as a men's health doc, in the fact that this business is like a virtual business, right? And I'm seeing people through a Zoom and I'm treating them, and I have so much fun. The guys love it. It's just so rewarding for everyone all around. And the side benefit, like the huge one, is that I get to be there for him because my work schedule allows me to be there with my little guy and my wife way more than I ever would if I had an office job where I needed to be from like the 9 to 5 schedule. And it allows us to move where we want to move to, right? When you talk about, being able to move to Arizona, we've actually thought about moving Wisconsin way, right? It's kind of funny that we're talking about all this now, but to be able to get a homestead and to, for us, it's like, I'd love to get some goats and some chickens. And he's been on a homemade goat milk formula for many months now.
Wow.
We've done all this fun nutrition stuff with them. And I'm like, so it's of course my curiosity now with goats and all that stuff. But
you're going to be a Wisconsin farmer before you know it, Peter.
Man. Oh my gosh. Well, I'm going to invite you out and we're going to go we're going to set up some deer stands.
Heck
and we're
yeah.
going to get some
I'll show
deer
you how to
hunting
set up stands.
I love it. Yeah. So,
but I'm not coming out in the winter.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Fall is still good. I can still do fall, but you live here long enough and you go back, it takes a few days to acclimate.
Yeah.
But my buddy tells me all the time, he goes, your Phoenix fingers you got, my fingers go numb on me, my toes go numb. I'm like, I got cold when I lived there. Now I'm living in 100 degrees and you want me to come back to 30?
Ain't happening.
But man, everywhere we live in everywhere we live in America's, we are so blessed.
We truly are.
We really are. I mean, we have our problems. We really do. But we are really blessed to do the things you really want to do. We're really blessed to be able to do it. And so don't squander the blessings, live them.
Beautifully said. Yeah. When I think about the podcast and kind of the dilemma that you've had with some of that too, and I do understand what you're talking about, where what I've seen in hunting too is you've got these people who everyone follows, right? And they've become real big names. It's got a big downside to it too, right? And, asking some of those people to come on the podcast, I've done that before, and they pretty much reach back out and just say, hey, I'm not a good fit or whatever else. And they're trying to be nice about it, and then I've been realized that was kind of a blessing in disguise too, right? I get to talk to people who are living lives where they're people who are humble and charismatic about what they do, but they're not, I'm doing it for the right reasons then.
Yeah.
I'm not doing it to gain followers because of that person's got a ton of followers. And your podcast is a really neat platform for a lot of local individuals too.
Yeah. Appreciate it. Yeah. Every time I talk about it, I'm like, I got to get that far because I love doing it. I love talking to people. I love talking outdoors and fitness and everything and just letting the conversation go where it goes. I mean, I'm a talker. That's what I do so I've done for work for 20 years is just communicate. I do want to say, because I don't want anybody to get the wrong idea of my understanding of it. There's a lot of good in influencers. There is. There's some influencers that are doing a lot of good and they're using that influence to serve people and to lead people to the Lord. And I love that. I'd love to see that. But I've also seen the downside of it. I've seen the influencers that have gained all the followers and the notoriety. And you watch their language go from they were kind of humble. And it's pride is probably the sin that drives us to all other sins, right? I mean, one of them.
Pride cometh before the fall, right?
Yeah. Not quite understanding how to handle the fame of it. And you watch their language go downhill. That's a big turnoff to me. Language is a big turnoff to me. I had horrible language. Like my wife said, I could put more F words in a sentence than anyone else and make it make sense. Like before I found Christ. When I was in this old business, I was talking to my mentor, a guy that was helping me in the nutrition business. And I remember he was saying something and I was talking. I'm like, oh, F-bomb. I'm swearing. And all of a sudden, we use this saying a lot. It's better caught than taught. I can teach my kids to work out, but it's better when they catch me working out all the time. And I'm watching that with my own kids. My two younger right now are saying, my daughter says, I really want to get in shape. And she's in great shape. My son's out doing pull-ups on his own. My wife looked at me the other day. She goes, it's better caught than taught. And so I'm listening to my mentor and my response was a bunch of swear words back and boom, something hit. And I said to him, his name was Terry. I said, Terry, I got a question for you. I said, do I swear a lot? And he goes, JP, more than anybody I know.
Wow.
That hurt.
That would be a sting.
But he never said anything to me. And I told him, I said, Terry, I will never swear again. I should never say never because I've used the word 2 times, an F word 2 times. I'll tell you exactly when. 2 times in the last 24 years. The first time was when my brother and I were wrestling and he did a neck crank on me and I thought I broke my neck and it just came out. And I was more concerned about what that was still in me that it came out than I was about what was going on with my neck. And it's given me problems still today. I would love to see the great influencers remove that from their from that. I'm more taken back when I see it. I'm like, oh, why would you use that word? And
Yeah.
why would you type that word? I mean, if
I
I'm
know.
going through the ability to, or the effort to
You're
type some things
choosing
up.
it, like you're actually going through the slow process of
Yes.
typing something. Like, no.
People get mad at you when you say like, I don't like to follow that person because I don't like their language, you know, or you think you're too good. No, it just,
I can choose.
yeah,
I have choice.
doesn't resonate with
Yeah.
me. So there is good in followers or in social media.
Yeah.
It's drawn a lot of people to hunting.
Oh, a ton of people to hunting, right? The tags in Arizona get harder and harder to
Yeah.
get drawn every year because there's more people putting in, right?
It's crazy. People that have never hunted before. So the social media world influencers have done a good job getting people into the outdoors. It hurts because we're losing tag availability. Where it has gone downhill is some of that is if you're not the baddest mofo on the planet, don't ever talk to me. Man, if you don't live, sleep, breathe elk and you don't give up your family to hunt elk in September and you ain't the baddest guy on the planet, do everything you can to kill elk, you ain't nothing in my book. I'm like, well, then I'm nothing in your book. I'm okay. Because I'm going to go hunt them when I can get a tag and I'm going to enjoy every moment of it. But I will have my butt in that seat when my kid's playing Friday Night Football.
Right.
I'll tell you that.
I have
Hold my
different
wife's
priorities
hand.
than you, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Hey,
God bless them all.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, I've met some of the bigger ones out there too, and I don't have anything. Actually, once I was hiking the Grand Canyon and bumped into one of them as he was doing a rim to rim to rim. I can say his name, Cam Haynes. Bumped into him, and then I asked to come on the podcast.
Rim to rim to rim.
Yeah, he ran it with Courtney DeWalter,
Oh, my
that
goodness.
ultra marathon legend she is. Yeah. He ended up running that with her, and that was pretty cool. It was fun to bump into him. He's actually like your stature. He's really,
6'5"?
Yeah, right, exactly. He's like probably 5'7", 5'8", and because you see he's being a big influencer. He's got so many followers. He's like he looks so big on camera. He's actually. You're probably more ripped than he is. I just have to say it anyways. Yeah.
Appreciate
anyway,
that.
yeah, you're fit.
He's way stronger than I am. I'll tell you that. That guy can, he's pushing weight around. Man, that's an individual. That's an outlier.
Yeah.
And somebody who's lived that since, I remember when my brother lived in Las Vegas and he said, hey, you got to get this book. I think it was Backcountry Bow Hunting.
Backcountry Bow Hunting.
And it was when he was an editor-in-chief of Bow Hunting Magazine or Eastman's Magazine, Eastman's Bow Hunting.
Okay.
And I'm like, wow, this guy's hardcore. I remember reading some of his stories. This guy's nuts. He's like hardcore, but
he devoted his life to that, right?
100%.
So
yeah.
you see how something goes when you devote your life to it. And like you said, you focus, commit, and then you adapt, and he's had to adapt a lot. I don't know where he is right now. I've kind of been off social for a long time. And he's just one of those people that I was kind of like, okay, I had my fill, I learned enough, and I kind of moved on. So moved past social and following a lot of these influencers. I'm like, I want to be different.
Yeah. I want organic. Any following that I could ever muster up or have anything, I'd rather have 1,000 followers and I have a relationship with those and they follow me because we have a lot of similarity in our morals match and stuff like that than to have 20,000 that are, just trying to get the next sponsorship pro deal, whatever, But I mean, again, to each and every one person is all good. I'm all good with all of it. I just kind of got to pick and choose and know the hunting industry changes too. And I get what they have to go through. They're in the business of selling products. And if that's a market that's selling products, that's what they have to do. I get it. I don't have to agree with it. It was even back before social media. I remember Martin Bows. They were the first ones to start putting the models with bows. And I'd always get to the back of the page. I'm always like, well, yeah, stunning to look at. I don't want to look at that. But why are they doing that? Like, I'm certain that girl's probably not shooting that bow. And maybe she was. I don't know. Well, I have a big time guy in the archery industry. He's like, no, them girls never shoot the bows. Now, female archery is probably the fastest growing demographic that there is. Awesome. I think it's amazing. I just hope a lot of those females don't get wrapped up into it and get used for their sexuality to try to sell products. And that happens. It happens in every industry. I mean, it really does. And it's a shame, but that's man's oldest sin.
It is. The old saying, sex sells, right?
Yeah.
So that's been the biggest. I mean, marketing, whether it's a supplement product that you see online that people are trying to market, or it doesn't matter whether it's cars or bows or whatever it is. I mean, everything. Yeah, everything. So it's been so much fun to just sit down and just kind of shoot the breeze on your life and to hear about your life and kind of all the things that you've overcome, finding Christ. And then even with the work that you're doing now, I mean, it's what a blessing, just to kind of see everything work out and better and better. It's just like, this is all meant to be.
Been a good journey.
It's a fun journey.
It is.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah. Hey, quick kind of a fun out here. So you have an elk, and would you use every part of the animal, or what do you, I'm just curious about what you would use. Would you use everything? Because I've had this thought about like wanting to use every part of it as much as I can. And what do you actually take from an elk? So you harvest an elk's down. What do you do?
I take all the available meat I can from neck meat. I haven't taken the rib meat. Also, I haven't killed an elk since 2015. I haven't used organs.
Oh, you haven't?
No, but I do follow a guy that's big on using all the organs. Liver King?
Liver King.
Liver
That's
King.
the guy. Yeah.
I'm fascinated by
He's
this
fascinating.
guy.
Yeah. So funny. I've talked about it. My wife is like, I've been talking to her recently about this and that. And she's like, don't tell me Liver King said it. And I'm like laughing so hard. I'm like, you're this like influencer on social media. There I am, like, I'm a doctor and I'm like talking about the Liver King. I'm like laughing so hard.
So I get outside. I just said it yesterday. We're walking. I'm like, oh, what a beautiful day. I looked at my wife and went, we should be grounded, young primal. We should have the sun on our skin, our face, and our eyes. I'm fascinated by him. My son-in-law always comes in and goes, are you watching Liver King? I'm like, I'm fascinated by this guy. He's done a phenomenal job marketing himself. But the more you think of it, I also follow some other doctors that are hardcore organ, just eat everything. And it would be good. I would like to know more about it. I mean, I've eaten heart a lot. I usually take the heart. I don't always take the heart, although an elk heart is good. But I take all the meat. So neck meat, I just got to get into doing the rib meat. On my next elk I get, which hopefully is Idaho this year, I'm going to get a gun tag because archery's, kind of messed up with my shoulder right now. But I got a spot to shoot a cow up there with a friend. And he says, it's almost guaranteed to shoot a cow. Now I'm going to take my big, long range boomstick. I haven't shot anything with a rifle since high school. So this is going to be like, and I have 2 long range, really, really sweet rifles. And I'm like,
fun to use them again.
Yeah.
Eh?
I'm like, this is going to be a lot of fun because I'll be out shooting them. But I'd like to get all the rib meat too, because it's so precious to have all of that meat. My son shot a cow a couple years ago and we just ran out of that. And I mean, we use it for everything. And so I'm now to the point where I love shooting good elk. I mean, I'd love to shoot a bull every year. It'd be great, but I just want elk meat to feed my family every year because it's so much better. And I'm into health.
Yes.
Right. And so
good organic pasture raised. I mean, these are mountain raised, eating every shrub and whatever. It's just so delicious.
And they're so full of muscle that eating that muscle that they have has to. My one friend who's a big bodybuilder, all natural bodybuilder, he always says, you want to gain meat, you got to eat meat. And I'm like, I like that.
Yeah.
I always tell my wife, I'm like, I don't want any meatless meals.
Right.
I don't feel man enough if I'm eating like, hey, I got some cheese-filled pasta, which is really good. I'm like, that's fine, but give me a side of meat of some kind. I'm not trying to sound like egotistical or anything, but I like meat to me makes the meal complete.
Right. I think this year if I do harvest a cow, which I'm planning on doing or hoping to do, God willing, will be I would like to tan the hide also. I think that would be neat to do. Start doing that.
Yeah.
You can buy them pretty cheap online. And I was like, well, it's going to cost like $400 to tan. But I was like, you know what? Be worth having. It's like it's an experience because you're not keeping horns. So from the cows, well, at least you keep the hides. And then
they're cool decor.
They're cool decor.
They really are.
They're really neat. This last year, just so embarrassed to say that I thought this thing had a really small liver and I accidentally took the spleen out. So when I went to the butcher or the processor, I was like, yeah, it's kind of a small liver. He goes, yeah, son, I don't think he called me doc. He's like, yeah, doc, I don't think you're going to want that. That's the spleen. I was like, oh, sheesh.
I work on the outside. I don't get in the bodies in my doctor practice.
And so, because I got inside the body cavity and, there's so much blood in there because it's all pooled up, but pulled that out, got the heart. And then normally from my other buddies, now I get livers. So take them. I think the neat thing to do is that because the liver has a very unique flavor to it, it can be a turnoff for some people. So this year, I think I'm going to take it, food processor it to like make it into a paste and then put it in an ice cube tray, freeze it. So then you got cubes and then you can just add a cube because it's like a multivitamin, right? You think that's how kind of I think about liver is like nature's multivitamin.
Okay.
So you take like a cube from the tray and then you just add that to your chili. And so you don't like get a major overpowering flavor. You just add a cube to dishes that you make. And then you've got, you've got liver.
Say I got liver concoction because liver's king and I'm the liver king.
That's right. And then you can say liver out, liver king out,
liver
right?
King out.
Yeah, I know.
You use any of his supplements?
I don't. I actually use Vital Proteins liver capsules. I've been doing that for a while. Actually, funny enough, so primarily plant-based for many years and then started adding in some meats. Really enjoyed that, liked how I felt, but my blood work didn't change dramatically. So my size of my red blood cells, my MCV, it's called the mean corpuscular volume. So that translates into the size of the corpuscle or the red blood cell. It was always big. And so in health, that means you have a B12 or a folate deficiency. Well, I was taking B12, I was doing shots and I was doing folate supplements and it still wasn't making a huge dent in it, eating a little bit of meat. And I was like, what is going on? I was adding in, and I figured, it'd be a big change because I was like, well, it's probably B12. And when I start eating meat, it's going to change. Didn't really change. Well, I added in a little bit more meat, but I also added in liver supplements. And I had buddies who had told me before, once you do that, it'll shift things. My red blood cell size went from like a 107, which is an anemia of large size. So I went from a 107, like a chronic 107, and the normal range is like roughly like 85 to 85 to 95 is like optimal.
Okay.
It went down to 91.
Wow.
And I was like at 106, 107 for a long time. Doctors always say, oh, you got to take B12, whatever. I've seen this naturopathic doctor, he's a buddy of mine, and told him I'm doing this. And there's something to, like I said, liver, because I think it's got the micros and macros packaged in such a beautiful, utilizable form for us that it is like nature's multivitamin. So I do believe it's a good thing to take on a daily basis.
I can't wait. So you got my blood, and I can't wait to get a consultation and find out what I need. I'm gonna add it in.
Yeah, it's a good thing to do. I mean, and you could see how you feel, right?
That'll be really cool.
Yeah,
I could geek out on what you do because I love health so much.
Yeah.
I'm excited to get the consultation and find out what my blood looks like. Hopefully it's all good.
Perfect. Yeah,
Hopefully
absolutely. Yeah, we can geek out more on it in the future. My fitness is I feel like working out, I'm so up and down with that. I've been in the past. And so my new future now that I'm creating for myself is just to have a community of accountability. I did some CrossFit back in the past and I really enjoyed that. I was probably the fittest I've been in a long time. And so I'm moving back to that, but at a closer one. There's a Chaparral, there's a church close by our place, Chaparral CrossFit. And I think that's where I'm going to start up next week.
Awesome.
So,
awesome. Yeah, it's important to get around a good group of people. My day, like this morning, I got up and went into the garage and got a good workout in. Like I have to start my day that way. It sets my day. If I put it off later in the day, I'm just probably not going to do it. And I don't ever take days off. I just work out every day. So my days off are filled with more active recovery. So I might just go out and row for 30 minutes.
Okay.
Get a good sweat going. But I just feel like for me, I feel better when I don't take days off. I take days off, it's like my juices don't flow as good.
Mm-hmm. My perception with exercise is it's probably the biggest mental tool in your belt that if you do that, you will be mentally way more fit of a human being and stable.
100%. I just think it does things hormonally. I mean, you would know that better than I would, but I just think for me, it does stress. I'm a high anxious, high stress guy, and I shouldn't be, but it's just naturally how I'm wired.
That's how you're wired.
So it is what it is. I have to burn some energy off. And a lot of times I'll have to burn it off in the evening too. So I might do 2 workouts. I may just go for a long bike ride. I may get on my assault bike and do something. For a while, we were going out strength training when I was doing CrossFit. I'd strength train in the evenings and just to do more because I have so much energy. Like I got to burn it off. And I don't take energy supplements.
Yeah, you're a super high energy guy. I mean, just sitting across from me, I can see how high of energy you are.
I'm wired tight. That's why drinking's was never good for me because I'm like, if I'm going to do it, I'm doing it. Like we're going to go all night long.
Right.
So I just put my passion into something else. And I think everybody would be better off if they worked out. Everybody would be better. There's nobody that is going to be worse off unless there's some sort of sickness or an ailment or something like that. But nobody's going to be worse off if they add in exercise to their routine. And we need it in America. We're 65% obese.
It's huge.
Or overweight. I mean, why did COVID ravish us?
Because they didn't talk about how obesity and overweight is like one of the major factors for fatality with COVID.
Exactly. When you start working out, what changes is your palate. You're not going to go get a good workout and then sit down and be like, just let me feed full of cheeseburgers and fries and root beer. I mean, you may indulge in that once in a while. I love pizza. Rosati's by our house is the greatest pizza I've ever had. And we do that probably once a quarter. And I gorge myself on it. And I feel like, why did I do that? Well, I'm not doing that again for 3 months. I couldn't do it all the time because next morning, and as I aged, I've noticed this. If I eat a crumble cookie, my joints hurt.
Isn't that amazing?
It really is. So I'm
instant feedback. The thing about it, for people who do it chronically, they don't have that feedback because they don't even know what it feels like to feel good, right? So sometimes when you're trying to convince or help someone understand what they could feel like, they have no idea because they've never been there. But then once they're there, you get that feedback. So you're talking about making different decisions when you start working out, which is a huge deal. And it's just, it's almost automatic.
Yeah.
Because you feel good. You start feeling better about yourself. You look in the mirror like, man, I feel a little bit sore. Automatically patterns start changing.
Yeah.
Sleep gets better. Like you talked about anxiety, depression, that kind of stuff levels out.
Yep.
People feel better. It's probably some of the best medicine we have available to us.
Sunlight, exercise, good water, good sleep, good food, stubborn discipline. That's kind of my, when people want to know how do you do it, you got to be stubborn with your discipline. You can say I'm a disciplined person, but I'm going to skip my workout today. I'll start next week. You got to be stubborn about it. If you're going to go on a program, you got to be stubborn about getting up in the morning. Like stubborn to me, I'm not going to take no for an answer. That's what stubborn is. It's like, you're not going to change my mind. What I think sometimes people don't understand is they think they have to put so much effort into getting a workout program started. You don't. I've been fortunate. I've been working out since I've been a young teenager. So my body's natural.
Your conditioning is there.
And my muscle memory is there. So I can get by doing 15-minute workouts. Matter of fact, my workout this morning wasn't long, but it was intense. And I got done. I'm like, whew, that was quick. That was probably 17 minutes, but it was intense. My muscles are pumped up. I'm swollen. My heart rate's going. Like, I don't need 2 hours in a gym. But you start doing that 15 minutes a day, 15 minutes a day. What happens after 1 year? It's the slight edge effect, right?
That's right. One of my favorite books.
It's a really, really good book, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. I forget the name of the weed that takes over the pond he talks about in that book. But like by day one, you see something. By day two, by day 7 or 8, the whole pond is covered, the slight edge effect. That happens in fitness, and it happens in how you eat, nutrition, all that kind of stuff.
Because we can be very unilateral about our approach and our looking at something and being very one-dimensional and just being like, it's all nutrition or whatever. When in life is anything one-dimensional? Like, you can't survive. You don't have, like you talked about fitness early on. If you're one-dimensional, you can't achieve fitness. But a key component of it is movement. And, and I think Liver King, and he has tenets from like the Weston Price Foundation. So I don't know if you know Weston Price.
No.
Essentially, Weston Price doesn't have the marketing abilities that Liver King has, right? So Liver King is very good about how he put together things. Well, Weston Price Foundation's key tenets for health are where essentially kind of the Liver King's tenets for health came from.
Okay.
And it's really cool because, and I credit him for it, like he's actually brought it out for people to be able to see and to be able to and he talks about them and he acts them out and he's very good in his approach, right? He talks about on one of his videos too, like, people can just be all about nutrition and they think they got everything out and like that's all you need to focus on or whatever. He's like, where he talks about getting out, connecting with other people, de-stressing, getting sunlight, going for barefoot walks.
Yeah.
Good food, movement. What's your sleep like?
Yeah.
These are the consults that I have with guys too here at Men's Revivals. Like, one of the questions I'll always ask them is like, how's your sleep? Yeah. It's an important piece. If your T is real low or testosterone, it's like, how's your sleep? Oh, it's piss poor, doc. I get maybe 4 or 5 hours a night because I kind of I'm a workaholic, whatever kind of a thing. And then you kind of get down to it. You start correcting some of these things. And it's amazing how life turns around for people when, you actually take the whole picture into perspective and you address it from all those different spokes.
And it's not that hard to incorporate. It really is.
It's showing up in these different areas of life, right?
Yeah.
Like you talk about gym, you don't need a huge amount of, for me, it's my past getting around, like I'm being all in on something and then being all out. But like you talked about, it's just showing up and doing it and doing it and just showing up the next day and just showing up the next day like you're doing right now. Yeah. And look at how for you, you wouldn't have it any other way.
No. Sleep. When you talk about sleep, I've had periods of bad sleep because of the pain in my shoulder. And then I've kind of figured out some new sleep patterns, new sleep ways of, I've had to change the way I sleep. Like I can't sleep on my left side, which I've always been a left side sleeper my whole life. Now I'm like learning how to rewrite again, trying to sleep on my back. And as I started to figure this out, my wife actually left the room one night because I was snoring so loud. I've never snored in my life. But man, I was waking up feeling so refreshed because I'm like, I'm getting good deep sleep at night. Most people don't get into good deep sleep, and it's deteriorating on health. Yeah, sleep is so important. Yeah, so much is so important. All of it. But it just get after it. Yeah. Just show up, like you said.
That's right.
You start showing up, you feel better. You want to show up again. Next thing you know, you inspired your neighbors, so they show up and you got a movement.
What was the comment you said,
Better caught than taught.
Better caught than taught, right? And people catch you doing the right things and you're an inspiration in that way. Instead of telling people, I want to inspire you to do this and X, Y, and Z. It's like, no, just be what you want to see more of in the world, right?
If you want to see a woman get in the best mood of her life, watch if you go to Wisconsin, you watch in the spring when they get out of the winter. I've always laughed about this. So, winter's dreary in Wisconsin. There's no sun. It's cold. You're trapped inside. Well, the spring comes out. One nice spring day, women are out walking. I always use women because they're guys, they don't walk. They're too macho. They're out walking. They're talking like this. They got friends and their arms are going 100 miles an hour. And every time I drive by them, I'm like, that's because they're exercising. They're getting some sunlight. They feel so good about themselves. Their energy's so good. Their mood's so good. Their marriage is probably the best it's been right now because mom's happy. So dad's happy. If dad could just be working out alongside of her, it'd be even better. Because usually you find a real fit wife with a not so fit guy. And that frustrates me. I'm like, hey, listen, have a little more respect. Like to me, part of working out is if I take my shirt off, I don't ever want my wife to kind of look over like, gosh, what's going on?
Embarrassed.
I want her to look over and go, that's just my husband. That's probably prideful. And I don't mean to do it in a prideful way, but I want pride in my relationship. I want pride in what I represent for my wife works very hard for our family. And I want to, I'm not reward her. That sounds so terrible. I want her to also
you don't want to disappoint her.
Exactly. Yeah. Or disrespect her in
pain is much more of a thing that we try to avoid rather than go towards the positives. Usually we're just trying to avoid the negatives.
Yeah. So, and she outworks me now. There was a time when we first got together, she never worked out. Like she did high school sports and then stopped. It never worked out. And I've always worked out. And then all of a sudden she got involved in our CrossFit and she works out more than I do now. I'm like, I got to work out every day because you're putting me to shame here, baby. So I love it. I mean, it's good, but our kids have caught it.
Yeah, they got the bug.
And I hope they keep the bug. That's one of my prayers is I just hope they want to live a healthy lifestyle their whole life.
Well, the thing is that when you teach a kid something, I mean, and they feel so good because they're always going to remember how good they felt. And even if they do go through times where it's a trial and they're not feeling good or whatever, they're always going to look back and go, you know what? They're going to remember the times when they felt really good. And they might go through periods where they don't do any of the stuff that, or they just neglect a lot of the things that you taught them. But I mean, haven't many of us been the prodigal, right? We've come back and we've seen it's like gee whiz in more ways than one, right?
Yeah.
Spiritually and temporally, right? But you can come back and be like, hey, okay, wait, what was I doing before? Because I felt so good before. My life was so different before. How can I do that?
I'll train a child in the way he should go. And when he's old, he will not depart from it, right?
Yes.
Hopefully in the fitness, hopefully mostly in the Lord, but hopefully in the fitness world as well.
Well, so good talking to you, JP.
You too, Peter. I'm glad we made this happen. We talked about it, I think, last September.
We did.
We're on, what is this? April 1st?
It's April 1st?
April 1st.
Oh,
you should have played some sort of fool's joke on somebody or something.
I should have. Oh,
yeah,
my goodness.
What a honor to be on here with you, though, buddy. I really appreciate it. I look forward to a greater relationship with you in the future, too.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I told Taps and even Hunter, I'm like, gosh, you left our hunting camp. Jessica made some treats and we indulged in some treats for your birthday. I'm like, gosh, Peter was such a great guy. And the true enjoyment that I saw on your face from killing that elk, like, that's what I love about hunting.
It changed my life, too.
Oh.
Changed my life.
Yeah.
I mean, that elk camp was like the absolute cherry on top. I mean, just being there with you guys and just, I don't know. I look back.
Well,
and
I wish I would have known. So we could have camped all together. So next time we get tags together, of course, camping. You had the luxury of you're driving back ways, but you're hot tubbing and cold plunging. And I'm like, I'm jealous, man. But I love elk camp. I love any hunting camp, really. Yeah, we'll share some camps for sure.
We will.
And have some fun.
We will.
God's great outdoors.
Yes. Thank you, JP.
Thank you, buddy.
Incredible podcast, such a great man, humbly sharing his experiences growing up in the world and not partaking in any of Christ's message and then actually turning his life around. So a really neat message from JP here. And, stuff for us here, it's timely, right? Talking about values, talking about what matters to us. When we go through these booms in the economy, are we leaving our families behind? Are we leaving other priorities in the dust, chasing material wealth, right? These are things that we need to stop and consider. And we need to ask for guidance in some of this stuff so that we can keep our priorities straight in our lives. I hope you guys enjoyed today's topics. We talked about hunting, we talked about life, and JP's story. He's got a really good story and something that can inspire something in all of us. So I hope you guys got something out of today's podcast for yourself, at least maybe got a couple laughs or maybe even shed a tear hearing something through a story. But I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode with JP Penzokover. Stay tuned for the next episode of the Rise Again podcast. Hey, thanks for listening to the Rise Again podcast. Great episode, hey? You know what? I really love interviewing people and I love getting people on who have things to share with the world. So if you have a really cool guest that you'd like to get on the podcast, email me and I will do my best to get them on the show. I hope you guys have a phenomenal week and stay tuned for the next episode of the Rise Again podcast.